Hi, everybody. This is Jen Wilson, and I'm here with my girlfriend, Amy Vetter, and we are here for our Friday Leadership Lunch Chat. Sorry, we're about 2 minutes late starting. I'm streaming from a different spot on my staycation. I took the last 3 days of this week off to dismantle my office and repaint it and rebuild it. A little bit like meditation, where you clear your brain and decide what to put back in it. I've cleared my office, and I'm going to put back half of what was in here before.
And that always feels so good.
Yes, it does. I'm excited about it. I've been in the office 18 years. This is Convergence Coaching's world headquarters in my house. And so, it's just, I'm not a pack rat per se, but I have tons of pictures in here and all kinds of stuff. So I'm glad to get a clean, fresh start. And I've been trying to do that in a number of places in my life during this pandemic. It gives me a sense of control in an environment where we have so little. Anyway, I know that last time, Amy, we talked about partner comp. I got a lot of good comments on that. So we took on an ugly topic. I think we should take on one today. You and I have agreed on another ugly one today. But before we do that, we have
before we go there,
let's take on the soft topic, which is and that is we left this from the last time or the time before even. What do we think the future of in-person conferences is, or in-person meetings? I mean, not just the short-term future, pandemic-wise, 2020, 21, but what do we think is going to happen longer range? So I thought we could just kind of play with that topic for a few minutes, and then we'll dive into our other agreed-upon ugly, hairy one.
Yeah. So I know both of us have been on a lot of conference committees and meetings, even with firms, about what to do as far as going back to in person. And I'm definitely feeling a push that we need to get to the human connection piece of doing that. I think the hard part is how you balance that with people that still want to be virtual, still giving the virtual people a good experience as well. And I have to say, as a speaker, it's been interesting. I actually was able to get on stage this weekend, not as a speaker, but playing my bass guitar.
I saw it. I saw the Facebook.
Yeah, so it felt good to be performing again. But there is something to be said of the difference. I've gone to some of these outside socially distanced concerts, and from an entertainer, musician, speaker point of view, how different it is to present to a socially distanced crowd that can't get up, that can't show emotion the way they've always shown emotion, or even interact in the way that they have. And then you have a bunch of people virtually that you're not sure how they're feeling, how they're responding, if you're connecting. So there's a lot of considerations in doing this to make sure that my concern is that everything's gone to virtual, so that's been the only choice. But what I don't want to do, what I hope doesn't happen, is people tap out of virtual because it's as grueling as anything else to sit on your computer all day as well and not get that connection that you need. So this balance between in-person and virtual is definitely on everybody's minds. And I would say that first. And secondly, that you can't really plan. I mean, you can plan, but now you have to plan with contingencies. So even if that's your ideal state, you have to have, it's just like the schools. They have to have a plan B, a plan C of what it means if everyone has to stay home.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly it seems that every conference association event that I've been involved in, or that our team's been involved with, and all the firm events, almost all, have 100% committed through the end of the year to be remote. We have a couple of clients who are still like, maybe would you possibly come in person? But for the most part, everybody's already just said 2020 is done. We're going to do remote. It's 2021 that I think is the big question mark. And one of the things that I think that, if I were to project out, I think that having participated, our company participated at the BDO Alliance Conference, where they normally have a couple thousand people. They had 7,000 people attend remotely. Engage certainly had wonderful attendance remotely. I think when you end up seeing that, all the conference planners are going to be like, I have to have a remote option from now on, pandemic or not, because there are a bunch of people who would participate in my education and this community if I offer it. I think most have been trying to offer it, but it hasn't been very interactive. One of the things I'm learning watching my daughter, my oldest daughter, who is becoming a teacher, one of their considerations in teaching is, if we're going to have part of our students remotely and part of our students in person, because some schools are giving that choice, how does the teacher engage with both equally? And you can't really. It's having done, like Engage has offered a remote option, and I have, spoken in rooms where the camera is streaming and I'm with the audience, and I know that I can't chat with that group. It's on iPad. It's hard for me to be with the in-person audience. It turns out they give the iPad to a moderator who isn't versed on the subject, so they can't type answers. So I think the way we interact is that we're going to have to, if we're going to go that route, speakers need to have somebody else who's manning the chat, who's versed on the topic, who can pound out answers so the chat can be robust and the in-person experience can be robust too. That's my recommendation, which of course makes it a little bit more costly for us speakers to have somebody there or a moderator who's knowledgeable or something. So the remote people don't suffer from the in-person experience.
Or vice versa, you pre-record your session and you're on chat yourself.
Well, that works great if we're all remote, but if I'm live.
Right, exactly.
With a live audience. Now that's, by the way, Amy, a bright idea where you are right there is maybe they shouldn't be streaming live from these conferences, and they should be recording and having the speaker come back and be with a lesser price remote option that's held at a different time, so that the speakers can be with the remote audience. I love that idea. Yeah. And I have
another thing that I've seen work really well, and this was prior to COVID.
Yeah.
At a big mindfulness conference I go to every year, is they have the speakers speak in the main room for like 20, 30 minutes. And then immediately after, they go to another Q&A room where you can go and everyone can just follow the speaker there, ask questions. And that's a great way virtually as well, where you don't man the chat during the actual session and you condense the content down as well, so that there's the opportunity to build in the Q&A time as well.
Yeah. I was going to say that my preference when I'm doing remote now, and we do all different kinds on all different platforms, is I like the pre-recorded where I can seed some questions and do some polls in the pre-recorded, but more importantly, I can go back to the video playback and be with the audience in chat. I think that's way more interactive than trying to present live and chat. We do that with our webinars and always have, but I always present with somebody else. So Tamara or Renee or somebody else on my team is manning the chat while I'm speaking, and vice versa, so we can have a robust conversation with the remote audience. And I think that's important. So I do hear inklings that next summer's conferences are being talked about as in person, and trying to plan for that and prepare for that, which is encouraging. And I pray that our pandemic lifts and we can do that. It would be incredible to get back to our audiences and our friends.
We miss each other, even though we're still connecting and so forth. It's just, it's very different than being in person and having dinner together. And
that's I was listening to a videotape. I took a video yesterday and recorded something with my daughters, and I was listening to the playback, and we all had masks on, and I was like, I didn't recognize any of our voices really. And I was like, wow, that is a completely different sound through a mask. And I was thinking about that in a live audience setting, and face shields maybe help you from having to have that muffled, strange voice. But I think that's all going to be interesting if we end up having to be in a masked up conference.
Yeah, well, that's how we had to do our concert this weekend.
I know,
and the vocalists were even masked up, which I don't know how they were doing that and getting their breath. It was very, very impressive. Yeah. So you want to switch gears to our harder topic?
All day long. Go for it.
Being silent when you shouldn't be. So I think we've all been in conversations that are hard, make us uncomfortable. And when we are talking about diversity and inclusion, as we've talked about on so many of these sessions, within that is really communication. And when people make you uncomfortable, what is the right way to communicate? So I'll set you up, Jen.
Well, I mean, first of all, the subject came up because you and I both participate together in, a lot of different activities, and we see people who are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to make enemies, or afraid to make waves, or afraid to upset someone, or afraid to take a position. And, right now, I don't know how to lead unless you take a position. That's my first thing that I have to say. Like, the mental game of this conversation you and I are having is, you have to just accept that in leadership, you end up having to make decisions or take positions to lead the group forward toward that objective, whatever that is, or to lead the group to operate and behave in a certain value set even. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's a lot of conversation like, boy, don't take a position on diversity and inclusion because that could be upsetting to somebody. Or, oh gosh, it's hard to mandate masks. I don't want to upset anybody. And since our, city doesn't do it, then we'll just kind of let it be people's best judgment. Those are, those are things that I would call that wishy-washy leadership. And people don't respect it and they don't follow it, and it's not very efficient. And so, the first thing is recognize you are going to take positions as a leader and they might not please everybody. That's the first thing. And the second is to recognize that you can take a position and leave room for others to disagree, and not make them wrong or be hateful or negative. You can allow your people to give feedback. You allow them to shape the position with their feedback so that they can shift your stance. But I just think when you're in the center of a conversation to say, well, I don't really have an opinion, or I could go either way, that's like a cop-out, it feels like to me. It's a conflict avoidance. It's an accommodating place to stand, and I don't think it's leaderly.
Well, and I'm just going to take it a level deeper because we were in an experience where we were uncomfortable. And I think it is very important to understand about leadership that when you don't speak up, it doesn't mean people aren't talking about it. So just because you didn't say it doesn't mean that behind the scenes now there isn't more chaos because you didn't handle it. And so what happens is when people feel the leader doesn't say something, or people aren't speaking up about something that makes others uncomfortable, and it's the elephant in the room. I've been in many work situations like this throughout my career as well. So this isn't anybody's first rodeo of feeling like this.
Right.
But what happens is then everyone starts talking to the side. And everyone, then is saying, how does this person get away with this? Or how this and that. And no one is actually addressing the issue. And when the leader doesn't address the issue, it actually creates where work productivity goes down.
Agreed.
Because people are now upset that someone's not taking a stand, and they feel powerless to do something. And it is what leads into diversity and inclusion, because there are so many things that happen that could be easy fixes with communication or taking a stand that may be unpopular. But if you don't, then people stop believing in you.
I agree.
It just starts chipping away. So you can think you're being safe, but it actually starts chipping away at your credibility.
Yep, it erodes trust and respect. People trust their leaders, want to trust their leaders to lead them in the right direction, whatever that is. And it's not just your talent; it's your fellow partners and other leaders. It's your clients. It's the community that follows you. They want you to guide them, and they want to have influence in that guidance. But at the end of the day, someone has to make a decision and say, "Let's go." If we don't, we're shiftless. We have a saying in our business: in the absence of information, people make up their own, and it's almost always negative. So in your silence, they will generate fearful or not hopeless or negative interpretations of that silence. You leave room for that. And then what you're talking about, these side conversations, it's called triangulation. In the absence of information, people make up their own. It's negative. Then they share it. Mm-hmm. And they share it with each other in this triangulation, which is a huge time waster. And it's also a mojo sapper. It just sucks the mojo right out of everybody to sit around and say, oh, I think this. Well, I don't agree. Well, I can't believe.
Or I had this experience and I had that experience. And then they start sharing their stories and can't believe that no one's done anything about it.
Yeah, that's right. And that nobody's taken a position or addressed it. So It erodes trust. It erodes respect. And at the end of the day, people will talk about how you're trying to be a people pleaser or an accommodator, or, they'll see through what you're doing. And they won't respect that. They're going to think, wait a minute, our leader is supposed to be saying, here's what we should do. And this shows up all over the place on big issues, big issues, and little ones too, like, partners not following a process inside a service line. And they are working outside that process and no one will address it.
Right.
Or, people making derogatory comments, joking comments, ha, 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 to each other in a meeting, and no one says anything like, wow, that stung, or whoa, we don't talk like that here. Or, there's just so many ways it shows up, big and small. And I don't think that the accommodating or conflict avoidant leader realizes how much damage it causes not to speak up.
Yeah. And when we say leader, I want to define that anyone can be a leader. Leader is influence. That is, you do not have to have a title to have influence.
That's right.
And to do the right thing and to gain respect, it's important we demonstrate those leadership traits no matter what level of a business you're in, of a practice you're in, and so forth. And when you see things aren't right, following certain protocols or, doing what you can to take action, because too many times it's just talk. And talk, it can start a conversation as long as that conversation is going to lead to action. Mm-hmm. Else it's just gossip. And it just starts deteriorating the organization. So it's important to really be intentional about the way you go about things, the way you live your life. Are you living? So if you feel in your gut that something is off, that's when you know something's off with your values, where you need to step back and pause and say, am I in alignment with the organization I'm in, with the work that I do, with the leadership that I'm demonstrating, or that I report to? And then what actions are the appropriate actions to take to make sure that you can get back in alignment with your values and the organization's values to feel good and fulfilled about the work that you do as a person.
100%. And in my experience as a leader that doesn't have a position in some group, like an association group or a group that I'm just there sort of consulting with, or I'm giving advice about, or I don't have authority, if you will, but I am trying to influence it. What I experience is a tremendous conflict if I don't speak up. That's the first thing. But secondarily, usually when I do speak up, other people jump in with me. I have to have the courage to speak up, but there are almost always people in the room thinking what I was thinking, maybe not having that courage. And some people think courage is like fearlessness, but courage is fear. I'm afraid. I'm scared of what I'm about to do or say, but I do it anyway. So I have fear, but act anyway. That's courage. And I have found that when I speak up, people appreciate it and they come along. Some of them come along right away and say, I was thinking the same thing. I'm so glad you said that. Here's how I feel. And so I usually have some support. It doesn't mean I have everyone's support. Other people will argue it. But at least I just discovered that there were people that I helped give voice to something. And another thing I want to say is that I have taken a lot of positions in my career here at Convergence Coaching, and I write a lot of stuff that not everybody agrees with, and people write me and tell me about that. But I have found that sometimes when I take positions in the moment, people just don't get it and they don't like it. And then later, though, it comes back around to some of the stuff that I was saying, like remote work as an example. They told me on a recent call that I should write a blog, and publish it called "I Told You So." I was like, well, I would like to, but that probably isn't very mature, for me to do. But I've been taking a position on remote work. I've been working remotely since 1996, and I've been teaching about it and writing about it for a long time. And I had a lot of people who would tell me, it'll never work. It can't be productive. You can't have relationships. You can't employ people outside your geography. All that stuff, that wasn't true, but it was their position. And I just stayed steadfast in what I believed was right. And sometimes that pays off later, but in the moment, you take some heat. And leaders take heat because they believe in it. And at least you're aligned with your values and your integrity. And you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I am being true to myself, even when sometimes it's not supported by the outside environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. All right.
We're
out of time. So
yeah. One of our listeners, by the way, has been kind of following along here and saying, yes, he's a friend of mine from high school, Brandon. And he posted here, voice for the voiceless, and be a voice for the voiceless. And I just love that. I'm 100% with you on that. And that's, I've been trying to be a voice for the voiceless inside this accounting profession. And the voiceless have often been young people, who positionally are voiceless.
Right.
And then also minorities, people of color, women, people that don't have equity stakes. And I love that, Brandon. I love Voice for the Voiceless. And I'm going to continue to try to be that. And I think as leaders, we should all look at our various places we're playing and see about Voice for the Voiceless. And I don't know what we'll talk about next Friday, Amy, but I appreciate this. And I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. And I hope all of our, listeners and participants here have a super safe holiday. We'll see you guys next Friday.
See you later. Happy Labor Day.
Bye.